Hi, I'm Lee and this is my podcast about my handmade life. I'm on Ravelry as louleigh and Instagram as louleigh_, and I am a purveyor of fine knitting accessories, and I have Shop Louleigh on Etsy, but you can find links to all of my online places at louleigh.com. Welcome! It's really nice to have you here. It's Sunday morning and it's actually not too bad outside. It's a little bit windy, and so I thought I would pop in and have a chat with you before I take the dogs out for a walk. So yeah, it's lovely to have you here and to be chatting about things that we've been making and doing. So this week in community news, we have the oldest along, which is coming to an end, and a lot of you have been knitting with your oldest stash or knitting your oldest whips and putting your finished objects in the finished objects thread for that. And so I'll be drawing the prize for that. It comes to an end on the 31st, and so on the 1st of February I'll be drawing the prize for that, and the winner will get to choose from one of two bags that I wanted to keep for myself. So the first one is this really pretty, this was one of my Christmas bags. I guess it's a winter theme. And now that the bulbs are putting their heads up through the soil, you kind of feel that winter is kind of past a little bit. It's starting to feel like just touches of spring here. Yeah, so you can choose from this one. And this one, actually, if you're joining the Advent swap to create your own Advent calendar, this one will be really fun for that, to collect up all your Advent minis in. And then the other one is this fabric here, which I really love. This is something that I had bought and then thought that to make bags, and then thought, oh, nobody will like this, and so I never made it up and put it in the shop. But then I showed it on Instagram and people were really positive about it. There's some of these in the shop right now, but yeah, so the winner will get to choose. This is my medium size, and the size is made to fit 2 cakes of yarn in the bottom side by side. So, but you could fit at least 4 cakes in here quite comfortably in your pattern and whatnot. So yeah, so the winner will get to choose one of those. And I have not cast on my next oldest along project because my knitting plans for this week have been hijacked by secret knitting. So actually there's something I wanted to ask you about that. So I have been swatching with Rachel Coopy's yarn, which is Socks Here. And I have been really enjoying this yarn a lot. It's just lovely to knit with, and I like the fabric. It feels it's not as plump as some other 4-ply fingering weight yarns. But what I'm really interested to know is if you have knitted socks with this yarn, how did they wear? So if you have, if you can pop over to the episode thread and let me know, did they pill? Do you have holes in your socks already? I would be super interested to hear about people's wear experiences with this yarn. Yeah, because as I say, I really like it, and I'd like to knit more with it. So that would be super interesting. Anyway, that's a complete tangent. We were talking about community news. So those are the prizes for the oldest along, which has been drawn this week. And the next thing in community news, well, we have the Tiny Owls KAL going along, and I have not cast on my second mitten yet. However, the Tiny Owls collection was a collection of 3 patterns that I released back in November, and we have been knitting along together over in the Ravelry group. And this week someone finished a really interesting pair of mittens where they had converted the little owl motif to look similar to the motif for their local hockey team, which was a lynx. I have no idea about hockey. But I just thought it was really cool that they had used the team colours and just tweaked the motif a little bit. It's so exciting when people take a pattern and make it their own. So that was really fun. And we also have the Advent mini skein swap going along. I think I got that right this week. Yeah, so the idea is that every quarter you swap 6 mini skeins with somebody else in the group, and by the end of November you have enough surprise mini skeins to open one every day for Advent. And the deadline for joining up for this quarter is the 31st, and then I shall pair everybody up and we can swap our mini skeins, which is loads of fun. We also have Knit 1000 grams happening again this year, which is a challenge to knit at least 1 kilo of yarn, maybe more, for me by the Edinburgh Yarn Festival. This will finish on the 15th of March, but some of you have greater goals than that, and actually I tallied up my finished things and realised that I had knitted 1100 grams, so I have exceeded my goal, which is good news. Yeah, so I'm really interested to see how much yarn I will knit before the Edinburgh Yarn Festival. Yeah, and I have set new stashing parameters for this year. So I've decided that this year I'm either going to buy yarn for a project that I plan to cast on right now, like as soon as it arrives, rather than thinking, oh, I might knit this jumper in a month's time. I'll just buy the yarn when I'm about to start doing it. Or I'm going to buy willy-nilly yarn when I meet one of my savings targets for the year. So I have specific targets that I want to meet, and I've decided that when I get to one, I'm going to buy 100 grams of any yarn that tickles my fancy. So that's motivating in 2 ways, I think. 2 ways or just one? I'm not sure. Anyway, it's motivating. So yeah. If you want to join in any of those things, then please come over to the Ravelry group. I'm not sure I've explained any of that very well this week. Oh well. If you want to join in any of the things we have happening in the Ravelry group, then please come over, introduce yourself, say hi. Even if you don't want to join it, just come and say hi. It's always nice to know who's watching and enjoying the podcast. So I thought I would start by doing my Boverton welfare check. For long-term projects that might suffer from neglect, important to have a welfare check. So I have come to the end of the shaping for the sleeve, and I put it on, and the sleeve does feel a bit tight, and I also feel like my knitting is a little bit wonky. There's some sections that I'm not particularly happy with. So I think what I'm going to do now is to give the whole cardigan a bath and just see how it all fits and it all looks after it's been washed. And I quite often stop knitting before I get to the cuffs and give my garments a wash anyway, because I like to know that they're going to be the exact length that I want them to be. Maybe that comes from I'm slightly above average in height, and maybe that just comes from having knitted a few things where I ran out of yarn and they were a bit short. Yeah, I don't need cropped cardigans. They don't look good on me. So anyway, yeah. So before I boldly go forth and start on the next sleeve, I'm going to wash this and try it on again and just make sure it's fitting in a way that I find pleasing. There is a sock segment. We went on a car journey and I had no simple knitting to take along in the car, And so I started my next tube. Whoops. So here it is. I've basically just finished the ribbing. This is just basically going to be tube socks for nieces and nephews and whatnot. The yarn, whoops, the yarn is actually one that I was gifted quite some time ago, unexpectedly, by somebody really kind. And it is Desert Vista Dye Works in the summertime colourway. So it's not one that we can get in the UK particularly easily. Well, I'd have to mail order it from the US. And so I'm really excited to be knitting with this. And as I say, I'm just going to knit the whole ball into one long tube, and then I will divide it up into tube socks for nieces and nephews and such. I think I should get at least 2 pairs of tube socks out of this. I'm using the Jane Richmond pattern, which is called... My pattern is rather scrunched up now. It has been living in the car for quite some time. So this is the Jane Richmond tube socks for kids with this delightful little girl on the front. Yeah, and I'm just making I've cast on the stitches for the largest size. So yeah, that's about all there is to say about that. I'm just going to carry on whenever I'm sitting in the car and make a long tube, as is my fashion. The last thing I've been working on this week is actually my weaving project, which I think I showed you a few weeks ago. And I have just cut it off the loom this morning, which was really exciting. So I had an opal advent calendar, which has lots of little balls of yarn like this. They're 15-gram balls of opal yarn. Yeah, and because I wasn't too heavily invested in doing something that was going to turn out perfectly with this yarn, I thought I would try it. I would get out my rigid heddle loom and just use it for a practice run. And I alternated the little balls of coloured yarn, because they were all random, with grey. This grey yarn that I had in my stash. I used up some of this. This ball is not complete. I used up some Socks Here and some Drops Fable and just some random bits of grey yarn that I had in the stash. So here is, just got to work out which is the right size. I haven't cut the ends off and I haven't washed it or anything. Like I say, I literally took it off the loom this morning. Here is my finished piece of cloth. I'm not calling this a scarf or anything, because I knew it was going to be wonky and that things were not going to go to plan and that I would learn some things. And so yeah, and the other thing is that I'd quite like to just experiment with this and try different things with it. So some of the things that I learned is that I need to pay much closer attention to my edges. They're relatively straight, but I've got some quite large section with these loopy bits along. I'll be interested to see how these look after I wash it. The other thing was, I keep saying that, the other thing. In fact, I think I probably do that all the time, so hey ho. Now where's the bit where I started actually beating in a crooked way? So I've got these loose sections where my horizontal threads had gone crooked, and I had started to, be on a diagonal rather than perpendicular to the weft threads, and I had to straighten it up a bit. So I have these loose sections. I don't know if you can see that just there. I was trying to get a balanced weave, which means that you're trying to make squares, exact squares, so you have as many threads per inch going horizontally as you do going vertically. But that didn't always work out. And as I say, I think it was partly because of, this is 50 centimetres wide, and I think it was just managing that width and keeping the weft threads perpendicular to the warp threads. So it's far from perfect. There are some loose bits and some tight bits, but I really enjoyed the process, and the opal yarn made it a bit magic. It's created this kind of check plaid crazy effect. It's not feeling particularly soft, but as I say, I'm intrigued to wash this and just to see what happens. I'm really intrigued. I think I want to hem a section and actually put it through the washing machine, because I'd like to see how opal is they're all superwash machine washable yarns, and if I'm going to make things as gifts, it would be interesting to know how they hold up in the washing machine. There's also little sections, you may not be able to see this, where I've just skipped a bit and not woven correctly, so I've got little sort of floaty bits there. I don't know if you'll be able to see from here. Can I focus it just there? Yeah, so there's all sorts of bits where I've gone wrong with this. And there were some sections where I had to make corrections. I think that's part of the learning process, is learning how to fix your mistakes as well. And as much as I'm not going to die in a ditch about mistakes that I made like rows and rows ago, if I can see a mistake that I can fix right now, I will go back in and fix it. But yes, I want to get another project on the loom straight away, something that's still quite simple, that so I can just focus on my technique and getting it neat. So my loom can make a piece of cloth that's 50 centimetres wide, and this is actually about 2 metres long, which is what I planned for. I used about 290 grams of yarn for this. So that was interesting, because I think this is a really good size for a scarf, so that you can get it right up. I like a big scarf that goes right up around my neck and feels really cozy. And I wanted to make it with 4-ply yarns as well, because I didn't want to make a really heavyweight cloth. This is something that I can I hope I can put it through my sewing machine. That's one of the things that I want to try out. Yeah, so that, otherwise you just end up with endless scarves, and I want to see if I can sew with this and make other things out of it. I might, for some things, I might have to stabilize it, but So all in all, it was a really good fun experiment, and I want to get another project just to make a scarf to go with my winter woolen coat. I'd like to get another project on the loom as soon as possible, just to keep building my skills and consistency with it. Yeah, but it was really good fun. So I had loads and loads of minis left over, because, as I say, I did work that in with a grey just to make sure that I had enough yarn and to kind of tie the whole thing together, so that it wasn't just loads of random colours. Yeah, so I've got loads of minis left over that I have cunning plans for. And the first thing I'm going to do is to do some surgery on my 2016 Advent socks. So there are some yarns in these socks which have felted. Yeah, so I just want to cut those pieces out and to knit in some new sections because I really love these socks, and so I'm going to do a little bit of surgery and make them wearable again. So yeah, I'm quite looking forward to that sock surgery. So that's all I have to talk to you about today. It's been so fun to come and chat with you. Please join us over in the Ravelry group. If you enjoyed yourself, then you can subscribe below, and I'll talk to you next week. Cheerio!